people came from, all over Texas, came to Austin. There
I
was
got
like, I mean, this
chills.
is kind of when the woman empowerment movement really began, right?
Yeah.
Like, right, pre-Me Too, but
Mhm.
where this was more about like the body rights.
Yeah.
And I was there for all of that. And that just like, I mean, you know,
It
it
ignited you.
ignited me. It
Yeah.
brought something in me. And it wasn't so much like, oh, like I'm a staunch Democrat or, like, no, I have my values, but it was more of who I was, right? Like what was I gonna fight for? Right. Like and having the DC experience, because in DC I got to go to Obama's inauguration, which
Mhm.
was, historic.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Latina Leadership Series. My name is Angelica Cáceres. I am your host of the Latina Leadership Series. On today's episode, I have the amazing Ada. Ada, how are you?
I'm doing well for a Tuesday. It's not a Monday at least, right?
It's not Monday. It's not Monday. I feel like the month of June is, I don't know if it's everybody's like getting off of school or if everybody's like going back. It's been a month. It's been one of those months. Is it the same for you or is it just me
Absolutely, especially because of this heat. I feel
in
like the heat
Houston?
has made it
Oh,
worse. What if we had like 2 weeks of just straight 3-digit, haven't
really?
we? I mean, it's been so
Oh,
hot.
oh my God. I'm not in Texas right now. I'm up here in Northwest Arkansas. And so the idea is that we did get some 3-digit days, but you know what? The weather is very graceful here. It gives a
Well,
lot of
lucky you.
leniency. Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't, right? I'm like, yeah. No, okay. So Ada, I've invited you on here to the podcast to have an amazing conversation with you because I've met you before in the past during a actual presentation there at the city of Houston. And as we were talking, I got to know a little bit about your story, and I was like, oh man, these are these are the kind of conversations that I love to have when I love to hear people come from different places and how they've actually come to excel and succeed in the place that they're at. So, from what I know, I'll tell you from where I know you is
Mhm.
that you've made your way up to Houston and now you're there at the city of Houston and you're doing um you're doing, I think, the marketing, right? Am I wrong?
Yeah, so the press secretary for the city of
Yes.
Houston. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. For the mayor in the city of Houston. Yes.
You have your professional career was something that I thought my professional career was going to look like.
Mm.
And so I really wanted I had to have you on here because from where you come from and the way you've made your way there, I was like, she's all of us. She's
Mhm.
all of us. This is an opportunity to get this to get these ideas out there that you can. You
Mhm. It's
can do that.
possible.
Yeah, yeah. So let's start. Where are you from? Well,
Okay, so
uh-huh,
sure.
uh-huh.
So I'm sorry, did I cut you off? Where did
No,
you
no, 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 no. I was gonna say, well, tell us what you do, but no, you know what? Let's start there. Let's start from the beginning. Where are you from?
from the very, very beginning. So I'm from the border area. I'm from the Bronzeville, Matamoros area.
Uh-huh.
I was born in Matamoros, Mexico. We lived there for about 5 years, and then we finally migrated to Brownsville. It's a
Uh-huh.
very common thing to do in the border. But it's not very common that a lot of those people end up moving out, right? And to
Hmm.
me, Brownsville will always be my home, right? That's where my parents are at, but I don't see myself moving back, right? Just because I've been out there, seen other worlds, and
Yeah.
there's a whole world out there. But nonetheless, it's still I carry it with me, in my heart. So I was there, grew up there, did the border life, right? Like during the week, you go to school, weekends, parties, and birthday parties, and uncles, aunts, cousins, go see them, and in Mexico. So that was kind of the normal thing to do.
Hmm.
And, but my parents were both teachers in Mexico. So they were, very big about instilling education with both my sister and
Ah,
I, but I think
nice.
just my sister and I.
Uh-huh.
So when we moved, they kind of had to start from scratch. And
Mm.
my mom was really the one who persevered there because she went all the way to get her master's degree,
Ooh.
right? And you're talking about someone who like English as a second language, right? She had just like mastered it, wasn't even, fluent in it, but she
Mm.
still went at it.
Yeah.
And that to me was like my biggest inspiration, right?
Nice.
Growing up, right, in those
Uh-huh.
critical years where you see, right, like how your parents, when you start to realize, right, like the sacrifices that they've done and everything that they continue to do for you to
Yeah.
have a much better life. So that
Nice.
happened, of course, because it was only my sister and I. We were always very close,
Uh-huh.
and we did grow up in a very evangelical family.
Okay.
So it was,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, where we followed it to the T, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of rules.
Yeah.
My dad was a pastor too, so a man with a lot of faith.
Okay.
But I take all of that and I say that it's part of my upbringing, and
Mm-hmm.
it's put me where I'm at as well,
Mm-hmm.
right? My faith.
Absolutely.
A lot of the chances that I took, the opportunities. I mean, I had to have faith because sometimes it looked like things weren't going to pan out, right? But I'm a big believer in perseverance and going with your gut feeling as well.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And I just feel like all that tied in, right, like has made me who I am as well.
Mm-hmm.
So long story short, my sister ended up doing an internship in Washington, D.C. She got into politics and in her undergrad, ended up doing an internship in Washington, D.C. And, she had to go to school in Brownsville, right? Because my parents were that strict. My parents were like, you're going to school here in Brownsville. So, when she was up there, she ended up finding a job, right? Like after her internship, she loved it so much that she like landed her job. And in the Capitol, like she was working for a congressman from Arizona.
Okay.
And of course, all this was so new to me, right? Like, to her, to me, it was, I never imagined that there was a life outside of the Valley, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or if I did, it was like, there's no way that I was ever gonna, how did I fit into that? Like, why would I be there? And so she told me, she said, hey, like, why don't you, I was just graduating from high school and I was going to a magnet school, which is like it was called South Texas High School for Health Professions. So it was all medicine, right? So it was like, I thought I wanted to be a nurse.
Oh,
not the case at all.
No, it was completely different.
Yeah. Talking to people but so I was like, okay. I mean, then she talked to my parents, and surprisingly, my parents, because we were going to be together, they allowed it. And, the rest was history. Literally, like that experience changed my life completely.
When you went up there. Yeah.
When I went up there, just the opportunities that I got, the school that I went to, I went to American University, which is 65%, Anglo, and, the rest are minorities. I mean, talk about just a stark difference, right?
From the Valley, yeah.
So, but I acclimated, like I got on the ball. There were plenty of opportunities for me to have said, you know what, I'm just gonna, no, this is not for me, or I'm not making it, or, like, I don't want to be, dealing with these challenges. I'm just gonna go back to Brownsville, which, I mean, it happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I've heard stories where a lot of times people just, they go, they try it out, and they don't like it, and they go back. Right.
Yeah.
And for me, I can tell you right now, I probably had about three times that happened to me where I could have just been like, you know what, this is it. Right. Like, no more. And I didn't. I found ways, means. I mean, if I had to babysit, whatever I had to do, to make sure that I could sustain myself while living with my sister, my poor sister, because, she started it from the bottom. When you start at the bottom there in Congress, you make pennies, right? So it was very, I mean, even though we had challenges and we would eat ramen, for days, it's still, I mean, the experience, the contacts, the network, just everything that I was exposed to was just so instrumental to where I'm at today. That has helped me to be where I'm at today.
Did she guide you a lot? Did your sister guide you a lot?
She did.
Yeah.
She did. And that's one thing that I tell people, right? I know I think it's because, people have their relationships with their sisters, but sometimes they're, it's just, I just see them, to see her at the holidays or for parties or birthdays. And my sister and I were, I mean, she is my best friend, and she is my mentor. She's, she's my other half, if that makes any sense. I feel like, we have other halves in relationships, partnership, yeah, there's different formats.
That's
So
it's amazing to watch Latinas like have relationships, and especially among family, right?
mhm.
Especially somebody who knows you from when you're small. So you were there and you were acclimating yourself and you made
So I
sure
was
that you got the
there and
places. Yeah.
yeah, did a great internships. I interned, my first internship was with Latina Style magazine, and I was
Oh.
an editorial intern, which they're very big on promoting the business Latina, right?
Uh-huh.
Like there's
Uh-huh.
Latina, which is like the cosmopolitan almost,
Yeah.
and then there's like Latina Style, which is based out of DC. The editor became a great mentor of mine as well and connected me, with a lot of people. After that, I did a government relations internship with PBS. They're at the national headquarters. I mean, just things that and everything aligned with my bachelor's, right, which
Uh-huh.
was broadcast journalism. So I
Okay.
thought I wanted to be, a reporter, reportando para Univision. It's like Ala Ortega, which maybe I can still do, but at this point I'm just like, but
So
so
I'm,
yeah,
I'm
so
so sorry. I was going to ask you. So
oh, yeah.
while you were there in DC and you were doing all these amazing things, how did you end up in Houston? How did you go from such a stark difference,
Girl.
right? So you're in the valley and you're like, I'm out of here. I'm gone. I'm gonna go do my own thing. I'm in
Mhm.
DC, and then you come back to Texas, but you're like, no, not the valley.
Yeah. Well,
How?
I mean, I was coming, from the nation's capital, right? I was in this little like cosmopolitan where you had people from all over the world, the embassies, right? The White House, Congress. So for me, Austin kind of made the most sense, right, to come back to. And
Okay.
I did, right? So I graduated, came back. Actually, I did an internship in London, right? My last semester. So I was like, you know what? Like I have always wanted to go abroad. This is the opportunity. I'm going to do it. And that's kind of the person who I am too, right? Where I'm
Mhm.
like, I see it and I want it and I go for it, right?
Yeah.
So I did it, and it was, but it was also an internship. I interned for like a documentary section that did like edited documentaries for the BBC. So just I mean, exposure, exposure, exposure,
Yeah.
and which I think is key. Right. Like I
Uh-huh.
tell people, like some people, they're like, well, it's just, I don't like to get myself out there. No, you have to. And so I came back and I came back to Austin. And I was just, like I said, I'm the type of person that I'm like anything, like whatever can get my foot in the door, and I
Mhm.
work my way through it and I work hard for it, right? Like I know it's gonna take me, to my next step. So I did. I got a session job during the 2013 during the legislative session, where I was a video editor for like just I worked for the Capitol itself, not for any
Yeah.
legislator, the
Mhm.
Capitol, but I got to see a lot of the behind the scenes, right? And got to
Mhm.
see the ins and outs, got to see them when they debated on the floor. I was the one like pushing the buttons, like with their names. Sometimes I would mess up. It would be really funny because the staffers would call us and be like, "That's not like the representative's name." Oops. But and I was like 23,
Uh-huh.
24, and
Yeah,
I
give
was
me
like
a break. Yeah.
50, like 50, 40-year-old like white guys who were just
Yeah.
like pushing
And they're
buttons.
they're they're huge floors. What are there like 150 of them? Like on the floor, like
I
on
mean, like
legislative?
state reps, state
Yeah.
reps. Yeah, there's a lot of state representatives. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's
Okay.
like over 175, I think.
Something
There's a
like that. I
lot.
was like,
So
that's a lot. And especially
yeah,
for
like
expecting you
having to
to
be like in
remember
that
them.
little directory, and I'm just like, get us kid, like so yeah, so I did that, but that year was the year where Wendy Davis did her filibuster. That was that session. I don't know if you remember the
I remember hearing about it. Yeah.
So where she stood up, she did a filibuster for 11 hours
Hmm.
trying to block, the first. This was 2013. This was like the first time that Texans were like going for anti-abortion rights,
Yeah.
or trying to pass anti-abortion legislation, and she was trying to block it, right? And she stood for 11 hours. It was huge. I mean, people came from all over Texas, came to Austin. There
I
was
got
like, I mean, this
chills.
is kind of when the woman empowerment movement really began, right?
Yeah.
Like right pre Me Too, but
Hmm.
where this was more about like the body rights.
Yeah.
And I was there for all of that. And that just like, I mean, you know,
It
it
ignited you.
ignited me. It
Yeah.
brought something in me. And it wasn't so much like, oh, like I'm a staunch Democrat, or, like, no, I have my values, but it was more of who I was, right? Like what was I gonna fight for? Right. Like and having the DC experience, because in DC I got to go to Obama's inauguration, which
Hmm.
was historic. I mean, like I said, being from Brownsville, I was like, I would have never imagined like standing there and seeing the first African-American president before that. Right. So all of that, like I said, all of that has just, pushed me. And, after that, I ended up getting a job with the Texas Democratic Party. So I was a Hispanic media coordinator.
Okay.
And that is kind of what like threw me into, the political arena.
Okay.
But my focus has always been Latino representation. Like I said, it's not so much about the Democrat, the Republican, the moderate. It's the fact that, we are so underrepresented. And that's what I saw in DC too. Right. That was one of the reasons too why I wanted to go into journalism, because I will never forget, I was at a panel. I saw it was, some panel, and it was all Latino journalists, and they were all telling their story. And it was like Maria Elena Salinas, Armando Guzman. You had like the big players, Mario Diaz Balar, like talking, saying their experiences. And I was like, oh my God, it hasn't really changed. Like it hasn't changed. It's been all these years. We're about to be, the majority. I think we are the majority minority here in Texas, at least. And things still haven't changed. So for me, that job at the party was also really instrumental in getting my priorities right, which my priorities were Latino representation. So I did that for about a year, which was, it was so much work, but I don't regret it. Like, it's an experience that I think if, you want to be an activist, or if you want to go into politics, you should definitely do, which is campaigns, right? You should at least do one campaign in your lifetime, because you see the grind and you see the hustle that, goes behind it. It's a lot. Yeah. And I even got to do like a statewide tour, right? We went with our candidate for lieutenant governor, who was Senator Van de Putte from San Antonio. Mm-hmm. And she just, she was super, electric, and everybody loved her, and going around the entire state and having people come out and seeing different parts of Texas that I would have never in my life, imagined like to be at. Even some were like, I was like, can we be here? But, from the South to El Paso to Amarillo, the Panhandle, all the way to, East Texas, closer to Louisiana. It was a great experience for me. But of course I was super burned out, and especially with politics. And so I kind of took a step back, right? I was like, once, the election came, we lost. And I was like, okay, I think I'm going to go more into the nonprofit sector, right? I'm going to do something that's not so political, and where I can kind of lay some roots on the ground, and at least, establish myself, financially, and just, pick up other job skills as well.
You said financially, and then you said nonprofit.
Girl,
it sounds like a financial upgrade from politics to nonprofit.
From politics, it is definitely, yeah. So
you started to work in nonprofit sectors.
Yeah, no. So I did that for 5 years, and that was in San Antonio, right? Okay. So I was, because Austin, I liked it, but it was very like, post college, that life, and people, and then it's at that point where Austin was really starting to shift, right? I feel like it was in 2013. Think about it, like now it's like, it's a whole different vibe.
But what people remember.
It's a little like a mini Silicon Valley. That's what what it is now. And back in those days, I remember that's when it was like starting to develop. That's when, and everybody was like, yeah, this is such a great idea. But no, I'm not going to go there. Because, I am from, like, now I live in Houston, so I'm all about Houston. Yeah. But yeah, so after that, I did San Antonio, which, was, but I enjoyed my time there. I worked for it was a health insurance company, but also functioned as a nonprofit. And they're a CHIP and Medicaid provider. So a lot of, government, lower income families, making sure that people knew that they have access to CHIP and Medicaid, right, through these organizations. Like, a lot of people think, oh, I can just get CHIP and Medicaid. No, you have to go through an actual provider. So this nonprofit was a provider for CHIP and Medicaid. But I loved it because it was all about, talking about access to affordable healthcare, right, for lower income populations, which always happen to be people of color. And of course it was San Antonio as well. So very, the Latino community there is, it's really, it's proud of its roots, its San Antonio roots, and being, the Alamo, and having, so, that was a great exposure for me. And then I got to be a manager there, a corporate communications manager. So I had a team, right? And I was like, una huerca of 26 years old, and, I was like supervising like 40-year-olds. I mean, like I said, a challenge, right? That I could have easily been intimidated. I could have easily just bye, right? Like, oh, maybe
Yeah.
it's not for me, but I stuck it. I mean, like I said, my ganas, my gut, like was like, no, you're gonna stick it through. This is what you're gonna do. You can do this. You can do
Right.
this, right? Which is like going against like the imposter syndrome that we typically get. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, it's
Yeah.
true. Right? It's like,
Yeah.
like,
I
you
went
think
to
about it.
I just came back from a luncheon and it was a lot of white ladies and I was like, oh, imposter syndrome set in real fast and I was like, get over it, get over it, get over it. Let's go, let's go, let's go. We got work to do. Yeah,
You deserve to be there. You have
yeah,
every right to be there. I mean, you've worked for it. So,
yeah.
and that's my motto now, right? And but after that, so I did that for about 5 years. I mean, great experience in terms of like working with ad agencies. It was a different realm, which like
Yeah.
added to my communications expertise, right? Like my background. It
Mhm.
just, I just didn't have the political, but like I was also adding in the marketing, the ad agency. And,
Yeah.
but then, I was like, okay, I think I've done my time here. I think I'm ready for what's next. And, I was kind of having what is it? Like pre not I
Pre-life
wouldn't
my
say yeah, you know how they say like, oh, I'm having
Yeah.
a like when you're 25, you're having a
Well, you had been going at it for quite some time, a decade into your career and moving around and moving up and manager and uh your focus was your career. So there
yeah.
is an early burnout stage for you. There was a
Mhm,
transition that you had to go through
mhm,
and you're right. You're right. So
mhm.
nonprofit becomes a lot. It takes a toll.
It takes a toll, yeah, where you're just like, you know what, I mean, you feel like you've given it all. Like, right,
Yeah.
what else is there? What's next? So I had that, and at that time, my sister had, she lived in San Antonio for a bit, and then she went through a horrible breakup.
Oh,
And she also, like me, she was like, I'm not just gonna sit here and mope, right? Oh, because her job also, she was working for a nonprofit, and they ran out of money, so they had
ah,
to let everyone go. So,
beautiful.
I had gone through the horrible breakup, let everyone go, and she was also like, oh my gosh, why, like, what do I do? She's like, well, yeah, I can be applying for jobs, right? Or she ended up going to Spain to do like her master's, right? And it all happened for a reason. She like somebody sent her the information, she applied, she got in, and she was like, you know what? Like, I'm gonna do this. So when she came back, she moved her boss at that nonprofit that they had let them go, she was kind of like her boss's right hand. And when she came back, that boss, who was originally from Houston, called her up and was like, hey, I heard you're back. Like, do you have a job? And she was like, no, I don't. And he was like, well, what do you think about moving to Houston, right? To like work for me and help me out. And he's like, I would pay you a lot more, just gave her, incentivized her. And that's why she moved to Houston.
Uh-huh.
So ultimately, she's the reason again
Like the good
why
little sister, you're like, you know what? That sounds like a plan.
follow you. Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I had never like I had been to Houston with the party, right? When I was doing the campaigns, we came like twice maybe, but of course you're in and out. You go, you're in the
Yeah.
event, you do the event, and then you get out. And so I started to come visit her, right? And oh my God, I was like, what? The city is so cool. Like, there's so much to do. It's so diverse, like in every sense of the way, not just the people, but just the areas. Like, you can go to different sides of town and you can get, any taste, I think, of the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
So, and things to do, different types of bars, different types of restaurants. Like, I was in love. So so she started networking, she started meeting people, and those people, she was like, hey, like, my sister, like, this is, I'm just trying to move here, like, hear of anything. And one of her friends, who is Maria Montes, I don't know if you guys know her, but she was the boards and commissions director here at the city, who is now at the
Okay.
county.
Okay.
She told my sister about the press secretary job, because when they were looking, they were really looking for a Latina, a Spanish speaking
Mm-hmm.
Latina, which
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, it makes me sad that, like, you,
Yeah, it is. It is. It happens. You know what? But here with your experience, it was a phenomenal fit. You fit
Mhm,
right in. You get the customs. You have the
mhm,
experience outside in DC, so you understand the diversity that Houston has. You
exactly,
understand,
yeah.
and So it makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah.
It was a honestly, it's a job fit for you. I think you're doing an amazing job there at the as a press secretary there. I mean, how I you know I again. I love the way you've moved around. I love the things that you've done and the
Mhm.
experience that you have, and you've taken no reservations. Like you were scared and did it anyway.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
yeah, no,
yeah,
and I still do to this day, I mean, I think it's an ongoing, it's something, that I'm always gonna be facing, but as I get older and wiser and just, with more
yeah.
experience, right, like, it's easier to tackle, and I love that, I just
Yeah. I love your story. I feel like I can have you on forever. I wish I could do like a panel and get a bunch of like hadas and just like have them all lined up and be like, look, no matter where you come from, no matter what your story is, no matter how you
Mhm.
do and navigate your life, like I think you can definitely accomplish and do so much more. But you're there at work, and I don't want to take away any more of your time because you're
Oh,
probably
yeah,
on lunch,
no, no, you're
and so you got to go work. You're part of the city, and you're running part of that city, so you got to go work. But
yeah, no, no. No, but
before I
I
let you go,
appreciate it. Thank you so
thank
much.
you. Antes que te
Mhm.
dejo ir,
Mhm.
if you could meet the hadas 15, 10 years ago, what would you tell them in a nutshell?
Ooh, that's a good one. I mean, I think what I've what I started telling myself maybe 3 years ago. I think the move here was very, very, for me, it was kind of like what changed me
Okay.
personally. I think it's what even though I was very responsible and when I was in my 20s and even when I was a manager, but I think this now like has really made me realize that I'm officially an adult and I'm doing great things.
Yeah.
So which goes back to the going with my gut feeling, right? Because there was just go with your gut feeling. Um, because there was, certain things back in the day where now that I think back again, I'm like, oh, I should have done that instead. But then again, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
We're here because we're in the moment, in the exact moment. It's where we're supposed to be at. So
Ada, thank you so much. If you're like Ada, think and know and understand that you're here for a reason. And if you don't know, and I tell my son this, you're here on this world because you're going to make a visible impact to somebody, one person in this world. Either it's going to be negative or positive. You choose. So take the advice of Ada. There's those gut feelings that tell you, ha,
mhm,
shouldn't have done that. Ada,
mhm.
thank you so much for taking the time and the opportunity to have a conversation with me. But before you go, if I can really quick, if you can just wave your hand at me
Yes, I
and
want
tell
to
the
take a photo
audience,
too.
yes, yes, bye.